G'day, Pete Moriarty here. Thank you for joining yet another live stream. I'm doing community Q&A. This is open questions, focusing, of course, on everything to do with Google Workspace and small business technology. So if you're interested in asking a question live for me to answer it, you can head along to ask.peter.tv. Super easy to remember. Ask.peter.tv. Drop in your question and I'll be checking if any live questions come through. If this is the first time you're joining, hello, welcome. My name is Pete Moriarty. We help business owners with their tech. We've helped business owners all over the world. We've got customers in over 15 countries. And we love helping small business owners with everything tech. We focus on Google Workspace. We focus on CRM systems. We focus on security. We basically focus on everything that you need to run a small business successfully online and everything you need to grow and scale your team. So if you haven't already, subscribe to our channels, head along to peter.tv. You'll find a link to our channels there. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So if you haven't already, head along to our little Ask Q&A area. You can do that here. Head along to ask.peter.tv and this little Q&A will pop up here. And you can ask a question and I'll do my best to answer it I can. If not, a backlog of questions here to get through that are usually sitting here for anyone who has been to our channel before. And if you're interested in asking a question for next time, if you're not watching live and you're watching this on the replay, totally fine. Head along to ask.peter.tv and just go ahead and drop your question in. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in that into, I wonder if I can drop it into the comments here. I'm not sure if I can. I think I can find the spot to do that. Yes, I can. Okay, let's do that. Ask.peter.tv. There we go. So you should get a little link there and that'll help you to drop in a question if you would like to. Okay, so let's jump into today's first question. I'm going to see if I can find a way to highlight the question. Yes, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so this person asks, is it possible to transfer emails from a user mailbox to an email group? I want to convert some user mailboxes to email groups, but I need to retain the emails in the mailbox. Okay, so that's a great question. And unfortunately, the short answer is no. If you want to convert a mailbox with historical email into a Google group, there is no way to do that by default or out of the box. Google doesn't really support that process. There are some third-party tools that allow you to do that. So there are third-party migration tools, which I haven't personally tested, but my team probably have, to help you to move emails from a mailbox into a Google group. Now, Google Groups is a service, and that Google Groups service is separate to what you would normally see in a user mailbox. Imagine user mailboxes in your account are effectively groups of email, and those groups of email, or those, let's call them buckets of email, are effectively where you store emails when they come into an individual user account. And hold on just one moment. I've of course got my assistant that is going off in the background, so I'm just going to go and deal with that and then I'll re-answer this question. Okay, so let's draw this out and make it simple. So we have, let me open up my little drawing screen here. I'm using the Jamboard service, which I love. Okay. See if I've just got the right file here. This is the one. Okay. So let's imagine we have some buckets of email. So let's call this Peter at. Let's say this one is my email address. And then let's say we have some emails sitting in, let's call it sales at, right? It's a pretty common one. Sales at yourcompany.com. And you want to use the Google Groups service. Now, The Google Groups service effectively is still a bucket of mail when you enable the Groups service first. But if you want to convert a existing mailbox over to the Groups service, there's no way to do that by default in the Google ecosystem. But what you can do is use third-party tools. So don't know for sure whether or not you want to attempt that yourself, but you could have a look into some migration tools that might do that. Otherwise, speak with our team. We're migration experts and we can help work that out. Or the other option is there is actually a plan B. And plan B is to retain this mailbox, and instead of converting it to a group, is to actually use it as a shared mailbox. Now, what happens there is we keep the sales mailbox here. And let's say you've got somebody else in your business, right? And maybe that's Bob at yourcompanyname.com. And between you and Bob, you want to share access to this mailbox. Well, how we would do that is we would use delegate mailbox access. So we would delegate the sales mailbox to Bob and delegate the sales mailbox to Peter. And both of these people would be able to access it and see into it. Now, the great thing about delegated mailboxes is you can still use that sales mailbox like a mailbox as you would inside the business. You can send and receive emails to it. You can attach third-party apps and plugins to it. So if you wanted to use something like Zapier to ingest the emails that get sent to that mailbox, or maybe you want a third-party tool like Hiver to connect to that mailbox and use it and turn it into like a ticketing system, you can keep that mailbox there. So instead of converting it over to the group format, if you choose to keep it as a mailbox, this is what it's going to look like. It will still take up one user account, just like your other user accounts. You're going to have to pay for each bucket of email, whereas technically a Google Groups mailbox is free, doesn't cost you for that one. But there are additional features if you choose to keep that as a user mailbox and share that via the delegated mail feature. Now, of course, if you want to use delegated mail, step number one is you need to make sure that it's actually switched on. And then step number two is you need to go to the user mailbox, and you start with the user mailbox here and then delegate it out to the users that you want to access it. And that's pretty straightforward. You find that in the settings for the mailbox. So you go to the mailbox and then you go to all settings. And then under accounts, you want to find the option grant access to your account, and that's where you can share access to your account to somebody else to access it. All right, great question. Love that one. That is a excellent question to start us off. Now, if you're watching the live, I can see there's certainly a number of people who are on the live stream right now. Please jump on and say hello. Drop me a message. Let me know where you're watching from. Would love to know. And if this is your first time on the channel, welcome. If you've been watching for a while, I'd love to know how long you've been watching the channel for. Sometimes we have people who are brand new, and we've got some people who have been watching me online for over a decade, which is pretty crazy. But there we go. Not crazy because they're weird, just crazy that I've been creating videos for that long. Okay, so let's jump into our next one. I'm going to mark that one as marked. Thank you very much. Okay, and the next question, and I'm going to maybe I'll zoom in, and that might make these a little bit better. Oh no, it doesn't seem to change the size no matter how much I zoom. Okay, well that's interesting kind of bug / feature. All right. So the question from Rick is, we have an old domain with 12 users that forwards email to the new one, but we still want to keep the old one. Can I move the old domain under our current Google Workspace account as a secondary domain, and then create an alias email address using the old domain so they can keep their old email addresses? So this is a great question here, and this is a question about merging or migrating email accounts or domain names. Now, we've got lots of videos on the channel on managing multiple domain names within a Google Workspace account and the different strategies about that. But this is a great question. What do you do if you have two different accounts and you want to merge them together? Now, I'm going to draw this out so it makes exact sense what this scenario is and some of the things we need to think about when we're planning out this migration. So I'm going to move again to my trusty Jamboard. And let's open up the actual Jam here. Okay. So we have two Google Workspace accounts. So let's mark out Workspace number 1, and we have Workspace number 2. Whoops. Now, the challenge with this is, let's say, well, let's talk about where we're going first with these. So we've got domain 1 under this account. Let's put this in a different color to make it obvious. Okay, so we'll call it domain1.com, and over here we have domain2.com. Now, this person would like to move domain 1 underneath Workspace account number 2, right? So we've got two separate accounts here. Now, the challenge with this is, as we're moving domain 1 into account number 2, which is absolutely possible, what we're going to do is we're going to add domain 1, and maybe I'll do this one in a different color. We're going to add domain 1 over in account number 2. Now, the challenge with that is that with domain 1, when we go to add that to our second account, and we can add it as an alias, which means it's going to have all the email addresses work for each one of those accounts. What's going to happen is when we try and add it, it's going to say, uh-oh, you're not allowed to add this domain name because it's already attached to a Google account. So what we effectively have to do is we have to first remove it from Workspace account number 1. Now the problem is we would have to delete that account for that domain to disappear. And even when you delete an account, Google will sometimes hold a domain for a week or 2. So here's what my recommendation is. My recommendation would be that we set up an additional domain. So let's call that dummy domain number 1, right? And we set that up under the first Workspace account. Then I would recommend you switch that Workspace account so the primary domain becomes that dummy domain. Now, you keep domain 1 there, that's fine. Domain 1 can stay. But you change dummy.com to the primary domain. Now then, when you have some time that you don't mind a bit of downtime, I'd probably do this on a weekend or maybe at 7 or 8 p.m. at night, sometime when you're unlikely to be receiving many emails. That's the time when you go and delete domain 1 from that Workspace 1 account. And then fairly quickly, if it's not the primary domain, it should happen almost instantaneously. You can then add domain 1 to your second account. So that's when we add domain 1 to the second account, we make sure we verify it, and everything in Google land should be happy. Now, if we set this up as an alias domain, what that will do is it will automatically mirror the domain 2 for any one of the mailboxes that exist. So we call mailboxes buckets of email, and imagine you have Peter, you have Bob, you have Scott, you have Regina, and you have Claire as mailboxes. Well, if they've got a domain 2 email address, they're automatically going to get the domain 1 alias added. And based on this situation, as it was described, each one of these are basically forwarding across. So I'm going to assume that each one of those users already has the correct alias set up. So when domain 1 is added into account number 2, then all of those aliases are going to work. Okay, great question. I hope that's helped with your migration planning. Happy to help with that. And we will move on to the next question. That was a good one. All right, let's give that one a tick off. All right. Wonderful, cool. Kirksville Web Design, hey, welcome. Thanks so much for being here live. Okay, don't think your LinkedIn event is properly connected to here on YouTube. Okay, well, yes, LinkedIn comments may not come across to my app, which is a bit of a bummer. But let me go and find my LinkedIn. I'll open that up in the background and see See if I can see what's going on over in LinkedIn. Maybe I've got questions there that are not yet answered. It says pre-live. I haven't used LinkedIn Live much, but I'm streaming to multiple locations. So no, it says this event will start soon. Oh, that's odd. Okay, it didn't actually start. Didn't actually seem to start the event. All right, well, I guess we'll leave that to troubleshoot another day. Okay, but thank you for the heads up. All right, so let's move on to our next question. Is there no way to assign different workspace licensing packages to each user as required? I want to manage all my clients from one Google Admin console, but the problem is not everyone wants to pay for the enterprise license, and therefore we need to create their own Google Admin. Okay, so this is a very interesting question. I'm going to open up another Jamboard here because I think it's time for yet another drawing. All right, let's open it up. Okay, so when we have a Google Workspace account, within that Workspace account, we're going to have a number of domains. And then we're going to have a number of users. And these are buckets of email. Peter, Scott, Claire, Regina, and Red. Okay. So what some people will do, and it sounds like that's what this question asker has done, is they will create multiple domains for different businesses under one Workspace account. And I don't know why you would do that. But I think sometimes if someone's maybe like a web host or a developer, or they want to like help out some friends and family, and they want to be able to administer multiple Google Workspace accounts, maybe they go with this strategy. And what ends up happening is we have multiple businesses under the one account, which is a big no-no. We definitely don't want that. Because what happens there is, sounds pretty obvious, right? Data can accidentally be shared between multiple different people or multiple different businesses. The administration obviously turns into a nightmare pretty quickly. And there are some limits on Google Workspace accounts that you're probably going to run into. As an individual business, you probably won't run out of aliases. But if you're a business trying to have multiple customers under one Workspace account, well, that's definitely not going to work. So what we need to do here is we need to think differently about how we structure multiple Workspace accounts. And you may choose to structure it this way if you have multiple brands. You may choose to structure it this way if you have multiple business units that are separate from each other, or maybe you have different directors or different shareholders. You may choose to structure it this way if you are a reseller of some sort and you want to manage multiple accounts. So what does that look like? Well, for starters, we need to take this Workspace account and we need to actually zoom out a little bit. So I'm going to make that smaller and I'm going to move it over here. And I can't duplicate it, unfortunately, but that's okay. I'm just going to redraw another one here. So we're going to set up Workspace account number 2 and Workspace account number 3. Great. Okay. So I've got 3 different Google Workspace accounts here now. And with my 3 different Workspace accounts, I will have different domains, right? So let's put the second domain for the second business there, and another domain for another business here. Great. Call that domain 3. And then for each one, you're going to have users, right? So here's our buckets of email for each user, and domain 2, we're going to have our buckets of email for each user. Now, each one of these accounts is going to have a special account, which is a super administrator account, right? Super administrator account. So that's the super administrator, there, super administrator. Okay, and typically, each super administrator will also be issued a mailbox. Now, if you're a small business and you just have a single Google Workspace account, you're probably just going to be the super administrator for your business, right? Because you only need one account, you only need one super administrator, and it's super easy, right? It's super simple and straightforward. But if you are a tech support person, which sounds like this questioner is, right? Let's say tech support. There's two ways of managing multiple Google Workspace accounts. So one is via a reseller. So if you're a reseller, which we are, we actually have background access to each one of these accounts. Now, we can act as a super administrator, but it doesn't cost a license for us to be a super administrator. We just have basically backdoor access. Now, our customers, if they wanted to, can tick a box and stop that background access. It means that we can bill them for the licenses, but we unfortunately can't edit any settings. We can't change anything. We can't, delete any accounts. We can't reset passwords for them. If they want to, they can do that. And so what that would look like is just basically switching off our access as a reseller. But because we're in a tech support role, not many customers are going to do that, right? For the most part, we're going to be there and we need access to be able to troubleshoot things on their account. So they're going to give us the access for managing their accounts as a reseller. Great, okay, that's nice and useful. Well, how else can someone access an account if you need to access multiple accounts? Well, let's say, I'm going to call this a different name. Let's say you're a remote admin, right? You want to help out with admin, but maybe you're a contractor, maybe you don't have a billing relationship, maybe you don't have enough customers to qualify to be a reseller. How would you manage multiple accounts, or how would you get access to multiple accounts without having to pay for a super administrator license? Because you probably don't want to be sharing the password of the super administrator between multiple people. That's not really a scalable solution, and it's just really poor security practice to be sharing passwords, particularly to administrator accounts. So how do we then get access to multiple accounts? Well, Google has a really cool feature that allows you to create a user without a mailbox. And that means that you do not pay for that user under an account. So I'm going to choose yet another color for this. I'm starting to run out of colors here, but that's okay. I'm going to use green again. So I'm going to call this IU. It's an identity user. Now, it's still a super administrator, and it needs to be switched on using Google Identity Control. And once you've switched on the Google Identity Verification service, you can create an identity super administrator that theoretically the remote admin could hold the credentials for, and they don't consume a mailbox. So you don't have to pay for each one of those accounts. Now, side note, it's a good idea to do this for any business. If you are a business owner and you just have one Google Workspace account, rather than the business owner holding the super administrator account, which is not really ideal security-wise, you can create an extra identity user without a mailbox attached. You don't pay, and that super administrator account would effectively only be used when you need to administer the account, and it wouldn't be used for any day-to-day work. That's the safest way to protect your super administrator credentials for a Workspace account. Cool, great question. So glad I had a chance to share that with you. That is a full guide on setting that up. We also have an additional video coming out soon with how to enable the identity and how to actually implement that and a super administrator without a mailbox. So look out for that video coming up shortly on our channel. Okay, cool. We will move on to our next question. Going to check for any live comments. Right. Thanks very much. Kirks for Web Design. Thanks so much for being here live. If you're watching live, let me know where you're watching from. I know if you're in the US, It's probably getting pretty late in the evening now, and if you're on Eastern time, you're definitely fast asleep. Yeah, for anyone who may be in Australia, probably evening time for you. Europe, it's mid-morning. So if you're watching from Europe, I know we've got customers and we've got viewers all over the world. Maybe we've got some people who are watching from that corner of the globe. Okay, cool. Let's move on to our next question. Okay, just going to go ahead and bring this up and do a quick time check. All right, we're going great. So the question is, do I have to pay to download Google Chat? And I wanted to answer this question because I thought this one was really important. Google Chat itself is free, but there are a couple of restrictions to be able to access Google Chat. Now, this is applicable if you're a small business owner and maybe you want to use Google Chat to someone who's outside your business, whether they are a colleague or a contractor or a supplier or a vendor, or maybe just someone that you're in business with but are not inside your business, and therefore they don't have an issued Google Workspace account for your actual company. Now, Google Chat is a free tool, but you do have to have a Google account of some sort to be able to access Google Chat. So that means that it either needs to be a Gmail consumer account or it needs to be a Google Workspace business account. Either one of those may have an @gmail.com address or an @anydomain-you-like.com address. The challenge is if you want to add someone to Google Chat, you really need to know that they have a Workspace account before you go and add them. Otherwise, they're just not going to be able to access it. Okay, so if you're sure that someone has either a Workspace account or, it's pretty obvious if they're using a Gmail account and you want to add them to your Google Chat, it's pretty straightforward. You go to the chat window, you open up the plus sign, and from there you can add any user. I'll show you what that looks like. So from here, we can click the plus button to start a chat, and you can enter somebody's email in there. Now, let's say if I go and add an email, let's say peter@peter.tv, which I don't think exists. You'll see here when I try and add that, seems like it does exist. Okay, cool. Let's try another one. It must have been set up as an actual alias of some sort. Well, let's say peter@peter.tv.com. Okay, you'll see here that it says no results and it just doesn't let me add that person at all. So unfortunately, no way to add someone who doesn't have a registered Google account, and it should throw an error to you if that is the case. Okay, cool. So from there, I think I've got that question pretty much answered. No one has to pay for Google Chat, whether you're inside or outside of the Google Workspace account. Think of it like Slack. If you're the owner of the business and you want to invite some guests from outside the business, you don't have to pay for those guests to be a part of it. You really only have to pay for the business account that owns the chat rooms. That said, if you're creating chat rooms between different colleagues and they're about your business, you want to be the one that creates the chat room. Remember, the people who actually create the chat rooms, oh, there's a little bit of thunder outside. The people who actually create the chat rooms are the owner of those chat rooms. And so when you're the owner of a chat room, you are the one who holds all of the data. So if someone wants to search for chat histories, if someone wants to delete a chat, if someone wants to remove people from a chat, if someone wants to set restrictions, well, that's best done by the owner of the room, and it's best to keep that ownership under your business. So that's my recommendation with Google Chat. All right, cool. I'm going to mark that one as complete. All right. Here's another great question. I seem to get these questions every week. Can the admin read my Google Chat with my colleague? Short answer to that one, yes. We get this question all the time, and effectively there's a curiosity of what can my Google admin read inside my Google account? And the short answer is in pretty much everything. If you have a work or university or school or organization issued Google account, you should expect that the administrator can read, access, see, and even make reports on anything happening inside that account. Now, not only is the admin panel going to show you insights and logs on every single change that's made, and I'll show you that in one moment. But you can also be sure that if someone is an administrator and they have the ability to reset your password, well, they can go into all of the history of your account as you. After they've reset your password, they can easily log in as you. And most businesses or organizations will have a policy whereby if they have a Google account under their control, well, they have the right to access any of the data within that account. So if you've sent chats to someone inside a Google account, you can be pretty darn sure that your administrator has access to those because at any point they can access it. Now, what are some of the ways that someone can see into a Google account if you are an administrator? Well, let's first start in the admin panel, which is the easiest way to see information inside a Google account. So I head along to admin.google.com, and from here, the easiest way to have a look at what's happening inside an account is to go to the Reporting and Insights tab. So if I go to an overview on my reporting here, you can see there's a number of, kind of like heads up reports that sit at the top here. I can see files accessed, I can see data being used and all the things. But if I actually want to go into my logs, well, I can go into the audit and investigation logs. And just as an example, I'll go into Google Drive here, and this is going to show me every file action for every single person inside my company. And I can do a search and drill down on that a little bit further if I wish to. But from here, you'll be able to see that this is going to show me all of the events happening inside my Google Drive right across the business. So you can see here on a Google spreadsheet, we've got all of the changes that are happening to all the different spreadsheets that are inside